What's going on, guys? I have been doing some tournament report coverage of the Pokemon vs. Half-Deck format for the last couple of months. We've been playing it over in the Pokemon 1999 Discord server as one of their monthly leagues, and there isn't a lot of competitive content online about the versus Half-Deck format. There's sort of a Japanese Twitter page that kind of talks, just sort of post deck lists from events that they have occasionally, but nothing that really goes into it. So I've just been using the last couple of events as just an opportunity to talk about the deck lists and how they look, and how the meta's kind of shaping up. It's fascinating to me that in 2026, with all of the resources that we have about vintage Pokemon formats, that there really isn't any coverage on this one. It's kind of crazy that there's an unexplored format of Pokemon. Despite being as small as this one is, it's still just impressive in its own right. So I've just become really invested in digging into it further. So I thought something that would be cool would be to kind of dive into the set as a whole, as opposed to just doing tournament reports, but talk about the set itself. It's a big set. It's 140 cards, so it's hard to do all of that in one video without this being, a podcast long. And I don't think enough people are going to sit through that. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to break it down into more digestible videos. And because this is a trainer set, sort of like the Gym Heroes or Gym Challenge set, I think it would be nice to maybe break down and just review each trainer individually. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start with just card number 1 in the set, which would be a Falkner card. So we're just going to go right into his kind of archetype and talk about what makes his cards tick from a competitive standpoint. So up first, I want to talk about the art. That's not something I want to talk about in a ton of reviews of Pokemon sets or whatever, but in the Versus set specifically, it is something really unique. There is, each trainer has their own artist, and so all the cards are drawn by the same person, which makes every trainer's sort of suite of Pokemon feel really cohesive and memorable in their own design. I think that's a really cool feature of the Versus set that you don't get from other sets, and it just really it really helps sell that you are playing as Falkner and you have your matching aesthetic Pokemon, and I think that's cool. Up first for Falkner's artist, we have super popular fan favorite Atsuko Nishida. Done some incredible artworks. Erica's Dragonair is probably my favorite WotC foil ever. I think this card is beautiful. The Neo Genesis Blossom also looks great. Rocket Eevee is an adorable, iconic card. Also did Rocket Ponyta, Squirtle, Meowth, Misty's Seadra. There's a bunch of just fantastic art, and then I really like the e-reader cards, and into the e-reader format, Nishida kept going with more art and did this fantastic Ampharos, which is one of my favorite arts in the set as well. So I just think this is a really cool thing to get to talk about for the Versus set. I'd like to cover this for each trainer and what their artist brought to that trainer's suite of just the vibe of playing as Falkner. In the set also, you have technical machine cards. Now these cards were introduced in English-speaking sets basically in the e-card format. But so if you're familiar with those, you might be pretty familiar with these, or even slightly more modern Pokemon. But if you're just a base fossil-based Neo kind of player, these are sort of just Pokemon tools. They attach for one turn, they give you one extra attack that you can do that turn, and then they go away. It's sort of like a plus power, but with a named attack on it. In this case, they are named Falkner's Technical Machine, so you have to attach it to a Falkner Pokemon. But it basically gives your Pokemon the sort of interesting moves that the format has to offer. There are a lot of fairly basic attacks on the Pokemon themselves, so the TMs are really the thing that kind of sell what makes playing as a character what it is. So I would like to start with those because they're kind of what you would want to use if you're thinking about building a deck. It's probably because you're interested in their TMs. So Falkner's Technical Machine 1 has Quick Dive for 2 colorless. You flip a coin, and if heads, you choose one of your opponent's Pokemon, and this attack does 30 damage to it without applying weakness or resistance. So as you can see already, coin flips are super present in this format. It is a post-Neo set, so coin flips are everywhere. That's just to be expected. However, even with coin flips, a coin flip that does like nothing, especially on like a one-time use card, feels pretty bad. 30 damage snipe is cool, and for 2 energy, that's the cheapest snipe move at this damage bracket in the format. So there's something to be said there, but the fact that you risk just doing nothing with your whole turn with a one-time use trainer in a 30 card deck, I think this card is like actively pretty bad. But Trainer 2, or Technical Machine 2, I think is much better. Slash turn for 40 damage, takes 3 colorless, guaranteed 40. Flip a coin if tails, shuffle this Pokemon and all energy cards attached to it into your deck. So you get to just put basically 4 cards back into your deck. In a 30 card format, 3 prizes. A lot of Pokemon in this format have like 60 HP and have like 10 or 20 or 30 maybe damage output. Games can get really grindy. So having kind of like an out to stall is pretty good. There's a Pokemon that we'll talk about a little later that people kind of splash into their deck to sort of fulfill that role. But if you were interested in playing Falkner as your sort of like core trainer, this TM would be quite good. The fact that you can do 40 damage is like the biggest sort of straight damage output that a card can have in this format, so that's pretty good. And then it does it on 3 energy. Now, most of the TMs take 2, like you saw from the last one, but something interesting with the 3 energy on this one and being 40, I mentioned that the Pokemon have like 60 HP a lot of times, so you can on your turn 2 use your 2 energy move to do like 20 damage, and then going into your turn 3, use the 3 energy move for 40 for the knockout. And it's guaranteed. So that's a pretty cool like damage sort of like gap check. And the fact that after you do that damage, you might even get to put your Pokemon back into your deck, so you get to probably take a prize and then deny one afterward, is pretty cool. So I think this TM is like actually cool. And if I were to be interested in building Falkner as like a deck, this would be a huge part of why I'd want to do it. So getting into the actual Pokemon, this is the first of the art that is done by the artist we talked about, and as you can see off rip, I think the art is still fantastic. I think this Pidgeot is beautiful. The sun over the mountain looks great there. The plume on its head looks great. The leaves, the foliage, like, I think this card is beautiful. But enough about the art. Falkner's Pidgeot is a 60 HP basic. Now, something about the Versus set, all of the Pokemon are basic. That's like the big thing about the set. It's supposed to feel like you are playing as the trainer that you are playing as. So when Ash would go fight Falkner, he would not call out a Pidgey that would evolve into a Pidgeotto and then into a Pidgeot by the end of the fight. It would just be Pidgeot right away. So you get to sort of like play with these big like iconic Pokemon right off rip, which I think is also another really cool feature of this format. It has Whirlwind for 10 damage. It costs 1 colorless. If your opponent has any bench Pokemon, he or she chooses one of them, switches it with a defending. You do the damage before you switch. So you get a, like a gust of wind effect. Your opponent does get a pick, which sucks, but there isn't a lot of cards in this format that can do that to your opponent. There's Warp Point, and there is Pokemon Reversal. And Reversal is a coin flip, which is rough, and we know Warp Point. So Whirlwind is cool, and the fact that it is on your 1 energy turn is also nice. A lot of decks in this format will bench, like they'll start their active and 1 on the bench, just because like your potential for like donk can happen, especially because like guys are so weak. If your opponent hits like a guy you're weak to or something, it's pretty easy to just be like a big damage on your first turn, and then next turn go into like just getting smoked. So a lot of people will bench their sort of second Pokemon right away. So Whirlwind sometimes just immediately you get to switch them into something else, and then you can kind of keep bouncing it back and forth, which just makes their playing energy on curve path a little harder to do. So I think that's actually a pretty useful power. And then later in the game, when they have like a built-up main attacker, you can, send it out of the way and get something else in play. Overall, I think that's a cool effect. And then Quick Turn, for 2 colorless, does flip 2 coins, does 20 damage times number of heads. So 0, 20, or 40. In this format, 1 energy for 10, 2 for 20, 3 for 30, etc. is kind of like the curve you'd really like to see. So the fact that this card can like 50% of the time hit at double curve is pretty cool. Or I guess it's like, what is that, 33% of the time hit it like double curve is pretty cool. 0 sucks, and getting 2 tails feels bad, but if you hit even 1 heads, you get the curve of damage you should just expect a 2 energy move to have, and if you get both heads, you just get 2 turns worth of attack, which I guess sort of makes up for if you missed a turn. So overall, I think that move's cool too. You are lightning weak, like all of the sort of birds always are. That's not a surprise. There is a pretty strong lightning deck, but so far, at least tournament-wise, it hasn't had a ton of representation, so I don't think that lightning is like a crippling weakness to have in this particular format, but it is definitely something to be aware of. Resistance to fighting at 30 damage, however, is... it's tough. The fighting guys hit like trucks, like they should, and taking 30 less damage from them is very, very good. However, the sort of downfall that fighting runs into in this format is that it is weak to a lot of stuff that's really strong, and it is resisted by a lot of cards. So fighting is in kind of a rough spot overall, unless you're getting like real weird with it. So having a fighting resistance isn't the biggest deal, but I mean, 30 less damage from the color that hits the hardest is a good thing, I guess, too. Retreat cost for 1, you might think that that is a little bit high for, a quick bird like Pidgeot. However, in this format, nothing has free retreat, so it's the lowest it can be. 1 retreat is good. You find a couple guys with 2 or 3 or even, 4 on a very rare occasion, and those guys they sit like bricks, but 1 energy is very pivotable as far as this format's concerned, at least. And because of the way this format works, because you only have 3 prizes, because you have such a small trainer package, you don't have like a lot of the consistency trainer stuff like oaks or finders or stuff like that, so you have to like really defend your important attackers, so you do end up actually manually pivoting guys more here than you might in other formats. So having it for 1 is pretty good. Overall, I think Falkner's Pidgeot is a pretty playable card. I think this is like probably the star of the cards that we'll see. That, just like generically Falkner, good card. I think this card's cool. If you're going to build a Falkner deck, I would have 2 copies of this. I might splash a copy of this into another deck, depending on what I was playing. Maybe not. The Whirlwind is alright, but it'd be iffy. But if I were building Falkner, I would play this guy too, for sure. Up next, we have Falkner's Firo. I really like the art on this card too. But 60 HP, he has 1 move though. For 2 colorless, he has Drill Peck for 20. Still weakness, still weak to lightning, still resistant to fighting, still 1 retreat cost. So all that's the same as Pidgeot. So Drill Peck. Having 1 move is rough. There's a Psychic deck that's pretty good, and it's got a slow bro in the deck that can turn off one of your opponent's attacks. That's a super, super rough thing to run into with this guy. That would be bad. But if you're not fighting that like specific attack, the fact that it is 2 for 20, guaranteed, no coin flip, no shenanigans, just like straight damage, is actually like valuable. There are a lot of times, you can ask anyone who's played in this league, where you find that you're like down a prize or even 2, and you like really need to get a guy who can like just guarantee you a hit for like meaningful damage to try to take a prize. And if you miss on a coin flip, you're gonna be set like super far behind, and if you hit on the coin flip, you'll be like super far ahead. So having a guy like Firo who's just like dependable, guaranteed 20, you just get it and do it. There's something to be said there, at least. I don't know if this guy is great, and I think he's like probably leans on bad, but if I were building Falkner as a deck, I would probably have this guy. The guaranteed damage that I don't have to flip for is enticing. Falkner's Farfetch'd only has 50 HP. Now, it's the lowest we've seen so far, and I think is the lowest the HP goes in this format. 50 is a scarily low number, in my opinion. There are a lot of TMs that can do, or a lot of guys who can do 10 for their first attack and then 40 with their 2 energy cube to just like smoke you. So I'd be really afraid of 50. But this guy has Beat for 10, Gust for 20, single colorless and double colorless respectively. just like Firo, the moves are like super dependable, and it is going to get you damage when you need it. But this guy is so squishy. I would really be afraid of playing this card, I think. The fact that you do have a 1 energy opener that does damage is something to consider, at least. We've seen plenty of decks where like people are like, damn, I actually don't think I have a move I can do on turn 1 that like does anything that matters. And so having a guy who can, I guess, is okay. But the 50 HP is, that is low. Falkner Dodrio luckily goes back up to 60. Still 1 move though, but this is a big one. For 3 colorless, flip 3 coins, does 20 damage times number of heads. So you get 0, 20, 40, or 60. So you got a wide range of amount of damage you can get. 50% of the time you get 0 or 20, and that's under curve by either a lot or a little bit, and both of those would feel bad. But 50% of the time you get over curve at either 40 or 60 damage. That's okay. Like, that feels pretty good. You're basically getting, like we said with the Pidgeot, where you did 2 for 40, 3 for 60 is basically like 2 turns worth of damage if you can pull that off. And if you did land that, that is a KO on, at least every Pokemon you've seen so far. There are some 70s, and there's like 2 or 3 80s in the format. But being able to do 60 is like a really meaningful amount of damage. So that's, there's something to be said there. Still 1 retreat, which is okay. I think this guy might be okay as like a 1-of in a Falkner deck, where you sort of have him on the bench till late in the game, and you've got him built up with his 3 energy, and when it comes time, you just promote him and try to go for like the tactical nuke on a guy. That might be fine. I think this guy's still a little sketchy, as you can see from kind of the Falkner experience. They've all been sort of but that's Falkner, right? He's early in the game, not a particularly strong gym, so it makes sense his cards aren't also that great, but that's where you start, right? It's only up from here. Getting into only up from here, actually, territory, we do have Falkner's Togetic. 60 HP, and with some moves that like actually start to matter. Healing Touch for 1 colorless. I want to get back to that move in a second because it's the one I'd actually like to talk about. So we'll start with Agility. For 3 colorless, you have 20 damage. You flip a coin. If heads, you prevent all damage of an attack and effects done to Togetic next turn. So you just get to like hit for 20 and then maybe set up a wall that just means Togetic takes nothing. You are hitting for under curve, which sucks, but the fact that you can like sort of buy a whole turn off of your opponent does feel okay. But the reason you would play this card would be Healing Touch. So you flip a coin. If heads, choose one of your bench Pokemon and remove 3 damage counters from it, then switch Togetic with that Pokemon. So this works in really cool ways where you can have your primary attacker out front. You can be attacking with them till they're weakened, until they're, on death's door, and then slam Togetic down, put the 1 energy on it. It's awesome that it only takes 1 energy to do this. You don't have to leave it on the bench to be in trouble. So you just play it, play the energy, retreat, you're active, get Togetic out, use the move, maybe heal 30 damage off of your main attacker, and then immediately put it back out for battle again. What it ends up doing most of the time is it basically buys like 1 extra turn for your main guy, and that's pretty okay. The fact that you can miss though does suck, but you have 60 HP. It's a 1 energy move. It's very likely the first time you miss you'll be fully undamaged, so you often get to try this twice, and if you land the second one, you're still getting to run away before you get hit again. So it kind of balances out. Overall, I think this card is cool, and we've seen it sprinkled into a couple of decks so far, and I think it could have a place in like other constructed decks. If you're going to play Falkner, I would definitely play this card because it is just one of the unique things that he gets within his archetype. But overall, I don't know if it's great, but it is, at least from what we've seen so far, other than the Pidgeot, it's like the first card who has like real utility. Speaking of utility, we get the Falkner Goat. Delibird here has seen a lot of play. For colorless, you get Ram for 10 damage, guaranteed turn 1 damage. That's cool. 2 colorless package delivery. Put Falkner's Delibird and all cards attached to it on top of your deck. Search your deck for a trainer card, show it to your opponent, put it in your hand, shuffle your deck afterward. If you don't have any bench Pokemon, you can't use this attack. So you can't use this to lose the game. Okay, that's fine. But like we talked about with the stall stuff, getting to a position where you can kind of gain a couple turns back is pretty good. You can be down very close to the end of the game and then suddenly pop this, put 3 cards back in your deck, maybe get a trainer out, maybe not. You're either up 3 or up 2 cards on your opponent now, and all of a sudden you're 2 turns ahead of the loss count. So this card has seen a ton of play, and I think is going to continue to see that in the sort. We just did like a group order within the league, and this was one of the cards that we ordered like extra copies of for everyone because I think it's just that good. It is the first like truly splashable guy that this set has to offer, and he goes in a lot of stuff, or at least has been. And then finally, our last card in the Falkner archetype is Falkner's Skarmory, 60 HP, his only non-normal type Pokemon. It is a metal type, colorless for Peck, and 2 colorless for Wing Cutter. Flip a coin if tails this attack does nothing, or it does 30. Notably, this guy doesn't take any actual metal energy to attack, which is very cool. If it came down to it, if you were trying to play Skarmory and you didn't draw the metals, which you only get 2 of in this format, you could have rainbows, so technically you could have 4 metals, I guess. But if you don't draw the metal, then you're not stuck with a guy who can't attack. But Peck for 10 and then 2 for 30 or nothing is pretty sketchy. 30 damage is over curve, I guess, which is at least good. But flipping a coin and getting nothing on that feels really bad. If you can load him up with metal energies, you get to be a little bit tanky at least, where he's taken 10 or 20 less damage. So that might be worth merit. And again, if you were to be playing a Falkner deck, this guy at least gives you a different weakness type. So if you did happen to be fighting like a lightning deck, you could promote Falkner Skarmory to sort of shore up that weakness. You don't have resistance to it or anything, but you do have a different weakness now. You are weak to fire. I think there's a pretty good fire deck, but fire hasn't been played much at all yet, so you're pretty safe with that weakness. Resistance to grass, though, is very good, as we've seen from both Janine and from Bugsy. The grass-type Pokemon have been performing quite well, so taking 30 less damage from them is pretty good. Another single retreat guy. Falkner's birds are, as far as this format is allowed, as fast as they come, so it makes sense that they are easy to retreat. But overall, I don't think Skarmory is very memorable. He does have purpose if you were to be just playing Falkner and trying to play theme decks kind of thing. But I don't think I would be building a deck around this card. Even if I were playing I'm going to play a metal deck, I don't know that this guy makes the cut. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The grass weakness the grass resistance is worth noting, but I think there are just other better metal guys you would just play if you were trying to play a metal deck. Scizor, even Steelix and stuff like that, I think would just be better. But he's a unique part of the Falkner experience and your only non-normal type card, so I think you'd probably play it as sort of the thing to sort of build around, is having this guy, 2 metal energies, and then the rest of your birds. If you wanted to put the metal energies on the other birds to sort of tank them up a little bit more, that'd be okay. I think maybe if you were to try to build a very specific kind of super stall kind of package using Falkner cards, you could use the Pidgeot and put metal energy on it so that its whirlwind move doesn't do 10 damage. This one, so he would do 10 less damage, so the whirlwind would do 0, and you're basically just hop skipping their guy around, so no one is dying or anything like that, but they're just sort of getting thrown around, and you're just trying to like be a menace. Maybe that's something you could do. But overall, I think a Falkner deck is probably pretty bad. It's a shame that that's our first example of a deck in this format. But on the bright side, like I said earlier, it's kind of only up from here. Most trainers get much more interesting after Falkner. I do think that Pidgeot has plenty of merit being a worthy card. I think Fearow would be an alright, like, guaranteed damage dealer. Maybe a copy of Dodrio, and probably Togetic and a Delibird. Maybe like 1/1/1 on those. A lot of decks in this format run like 5 to 6 or 7 Pokemon. So you don't get a lot, so your Pokemon really do have to matter. So it would be tough to justify some of these slots, but if I were like hell-bent on playing Falkner, that's probably what I'd do. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. We'll get back to the next video with the next trainer here as soon as I can. Thank you for hanging out. If you stuck around to listen to me ramble about versus cards for 25 minutes, I've got 12 other trainers to do this for, so buckle up.